Aha. All right. Welcome to Empowering Educators, Unleashing the Potential of Life Skills, Academic Content, and EdTech, aka using PBL to help kids connect passion to purpose and AI tools with George Valenzuela. Thank you for being here, George.
It's a pleasure, Laura. So for everyone watching, Laura talked me into doing this on the road. And I know you're liking the views right now, right? Like you see the camera moving, but it's all because of Laura. I want to thank Lynn, Andrew, Patrick, the entire team for having me today. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Well, we are happy to have you. And honestly, we love the view. I kind of want a tour, but first we'll dive into some of your expertise, which I guess first off, why are you in Orlando?
All right, so I created a little slide deck and I have it here. Just one second. So I'm in Orlando because I'm at the Visible Learning Conference. For folks that are in the chat, do we all know Visible Learning? Are we familiar with the work of Dr. Hattie? Okay, so I'll explain real quick. Hold on. Let me just, can y'all see PowerPoint?
Yep, we see
great.
that.
All right, so let me just let Zoom. All right, it's not letting me go into presentation. Okay, I'm not sure why it's not letting me.
Well, we see it. I mean, we see you.
Okay, great. Yeah, so Visible Learning is the work of Dr. John Hattie. It's through Corwin, and Dr. Hattie has a meta analyses, like it's like a curation of instructional strategies that we know work in education because they make learning visible. So I'm a visible learning teacher, and what that means is this: the strategies that I use in my classroom, that I use in my workshops, they're high yielding strategies, which mean that they have a high impact on not just academic achievement, but also engagement in the classroom. So it's like having little recipes for bringing out what you want to see in students. And so it's all instructional strategies. It's all pedagogy. And so I have a book that is being launched in September, and it's through Corwin, and it's called PBL Plus. And I don't want you guys to see, okay, grade 6 through 12. No, it's really for everyone, but the projects in the book are actually middle school and high school, but they can be adapted. And if you know your standards, then you can find your standards in the lower grades as well. And so I'm speaking here tomorrow, and I'm at Universal today.
Wild ride. Will we be getting a little bit of these golden nuggets when you join us for EdTech this fall?
Oh, yeah. So I will actually go here. So here's the cover of the book. You can pre-order it if you'd like, but I'll have the book at the conference. Now, the book has a framework, and this is called the PBL Plus framework. And I will actually explain 3 of the elements here today, but at EdTech, we'll do an actual workshop, and we'll have different teams of teachers explore each one, make the big poster boards, and explain what it is. So yeah, so I'm gonna coach you guys like it's a workshop.
Ooh, I love that. I love hands-on. Another question would be about this book in particular. What inspired you to write this?
So I've been doing PBL for the last, I want to say 10 years. I started back in 2014 with an organization. It's called the Buck Institute.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard of them?
Oh yeah.
All right.
Yep.
So now they're known as PBL Works. And I started out as a national faculty. I've been to 29 states and over 70 cities in America, working in K through 16, doing workshops for about 10 years. 5 years before that, I was at a district office, and I worked with educators for 6 years before that. So it's been like a 15-year journey, but I've done these workshops, and I've really gathered a lot of data, and I've gotten to see what educators in the space need. And that's why there's 6 elements. So there is definitely understanding PBL as a research-based instructional approach. And so all of the experts all over the world have arrived at a consensus in 2018 that these are the 6 elements that make up high quality PBL. And these are really what the student experience should be. And if we're not integrating these things, then it's not really PBL. And so in my framework, that's like the first thing, is understanding PBL. The second step is understanding life skills. And so on the cover, it says SEL, but in the book, I actually hit on 3 different things. And this is from my work with kids. Like I still work with kids also. Like I have a couple of contracts where not just the admin, not just teachers, I actually work with young people. And that's how my SEL book was developed through action research. And one of the things that I learned in my work is that so for SEL, we always start in self-awareness. But when you're dealing with young people that have broken families or don't have strong advocates, they don't always know who they are, like, knowledge of self. And so the book, it focuses on some life skills, knowledge of self, knowing who you are, self-awareness, knowing why you do what you do, the other SEL competencies, which we all know. But then a lot of schools in America have graduate profiles. And so these are skills that a lot of school districts want their young people really graduating with. And so all of these different skills are in the book. They are lifted up in different ways. But in my workshops, we allow educators to choose what their kids need in terms of life skills. And it might even be career skills, right? So like it's up to them. And there's also knowing young people, right? When we know young people, not just as learners, but also as people, then we can make not just a learning partnership, but a relationship. And as we all know, in my opinion, empathy is the prerequisite for any relationship because it allows us to try to understand how someone feels. And so in EdTech, I'll be introducing something called the empathy map. Now, empathy mapping is from the business world, and this is what a lot of businesses use to try to understand who their consumer is so they can develop better products. And so if you think about what the research says, knowing young people as people, what do they like to do? What are their interests? What are their goals? What are their assets? What are they good at? And then their academic, their life skills, and their career needs. If you think about it, in schools across America, and really the world, I think there's 3 types of learning happening: life skills, academics, and also career. And so I'll be having educators work on this and aspects of the entire framework at EdTech.
Oh, I love that. I really do love that empathy map. So we'll get a chance to sort of hands-on think about almost like our users, like who's in our classroom, who's coming in the door,
Right.
how can we support them? And so I'm just kind of making the leap here. So from this empathy map, probably we can address all of these things through high quality project-based learning. Is that kind of where you go with that in the book?
Yeah. I mean, think about it, right? Intellectual challenge and accomplishment, that's your academic stuff, right? So in every subject area, there's an algorithm or there's a systematic approach to problem solving. In education, the most widely used thinking framework is Bloom's taxonomy. But if you think about it, science has the inquiry process, has engineering design. The social studies has, timelines are a way to like understand things, right? They also have design thinking, right? In computer science, we have computational thinking. The whole point is this, is to find out what our kids need to solve the problems in our projects, in our classrooms, in their life, and then include that into the project. And so they're learning how to problem solve, but within the context of a project where they are developing a product that is for the public, where they are working with others, adults and other young people, where they're managing a project, where they're reflecting. So yeah, it's very, very personalized. But like I said before, offline, we really are building a plane as we fly it, but we know the tools that we will be using to build a plane.
Right.
And
Like it's
that's
like
what
managing the chaos. Like we have the supports, and yes, we don't know all the answers or exactly where student interest will take us,
exactly.
but we have the guardrails.
Exactly. There you go. The guard. So you said it better than I did. So I appreciate that. I
Oh, no.
appreciate that. Yeah.
Love that.
So I won't talk any more about the framework because I need to do my workshop in person, but for folks that are watching, listening, it'll be hands-on. You will be actively working with folks in the audience. I know Andrew and Lynn are here online. They've been in my workshops, and you're going to have a very experiential experience that will have some reflection at the end of it as well.
I love that. Learn by doing. So I'm going to move on to another question for you, just because I'm a little bit curious. So just kind of following you on social media and just learning more about you. You have a company, Lifelong Learning Defined.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Why did you name it that? And I guess tell us a little bit more about this company.
All right. So, Laura, have you ever seen Forrest Gump?
Yes, of course.
Okay. Do you remember when Jenny dumped him for the very last time and he went running for like 3 years?
Yep.
Okay. So
I
in
guess I'll go home
2011,
now.
so in 2011, I had a major loss in my life. And prior to, I never had a major loss, not one that I felt very deeply. And at the time, I couldn't do the things that I was into. Like I couldn't have any fun. Like
Mhm.
folks out there that have ever had any heartbreak, have ever been completely feeling like their world is shattered, will understand what I'm saying, where nothing, even food doesn't taste the same, concerts, nothing that you enjoy doing is really going to help you at the time. But my passion was always STEM and computer science, was always education, even as a little kid. Like, even though, like at the conference, like we'll unpack this, I grew up in poverty and foster care, like in a group home, never met my dad, all of those things. But I always excelled at education. Always. I have all my report cards. I got my receipts. Well,
I have my
anyway,
receipts.
that was my passion. And
Yes.
I dived into that like Forrest Gump. And for 5-6 years, I went running. And what I learned was that I defined for George what my lifelong learning is, meaning for my professional growth and for my personal growth, I've identified, so I'm building the plane as I fly it, but I identified what the tools are, what the systems, the models, and the frameworks that I will use to always be lifelong learning. And one of the things I realized as a young teacher was that at the time, 21 years ago, I didn't know how to teach. Why? Because I didn't understand high yielding strategies. I didn't have a great playbook. So if you have a great personality and young people like you can essentially wing it in the classroom. And that's really what I think I was really doing at the time. Like I was winging it. I had a great relationship with the kids, but looking back, I don't feel that I gave everyone exactly what they needed. As an instructional leader at the district level, I learned that we were asking our teachers in our schools to do things that we didn't know how to do ourselves. And I did not want to be a transactional leader, like the type of administrator that shows up with the resources and the curriculum and the tools to say, okay, here it is, now figure it out.
Yeah.
So back in 2014, I joined the cohort and I became a master teacher. I learned how to plan lessons, how to facilitate them. And then in the PhD program, I learned the science and the learning sciences and how young people learn, well, how all people learn.
Yeah.
And that's why I named the company 6 years ago, Lifelong Learning Defined, because I've defined it for me, but I also hope that I am helping it define for other people as well. And the arrow is going up because we're always learning. It's lifelong learning. And when I'm in my workshops, even right now, I consider myself a learner. So I'm learning from you, from the audience, what's happening in the chat. Yes, I have some expertise, but so does everyone else. And we combine that all together. And that's a collaborative classroom.
I love that. I love that so much. So you actually work the gamut then? So like lifelong learning defined, you help essentially grow not only adult learners, but student learners, the whole gamut really, depending on, what they need.
That was a brand new thing. Yeah. So I did not plan that. So I started out with teachers
Okay.
And because I was an admin and we used to do something in Richmond City Public Schools that's called learning walks, which we would visit classrooms and then we would design our PD solutions. So that's action research actually. And that is something that anyone that's in a graduate program completely understands. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I blended that into my work. And so I started to now work with first assistant superintendents, then superintendents, long-term contracts. That's what my new book is about. Well, the one I start writing after the summer.
Yeah.
And it's a leadership book. And it's essentially how to help schools with instructional alignment, which we do get into in the PBL workshop, in my leadership workshops. But anyway, I always felt, like I said earlier, that I really wasn't like the teacher I am now.
Mm-hmm.
And one day I was in Maryland and I was doing a keynote for about 150 teachers, and it was on SEL, on the SEL book that came out last October. And and the principal there said, "Hey, George, can you repurpose this information for our students?" Well, I said, "Yeah." So what I did was I made a portfolio. It has all the strategies that's in the book. And we basically started to do it like we started doing it twice a month. It moved into Illinois, Sacramento, and now it's just part of my work and what I offer schools. So instead of just working with teachers, now I can model, if they want, our strategies, our frameworks, our tools with young people as well. And it's very fulfilling, actually. It makes me feel really good because in some spaces, it puts me in the trenches and I can totally understand like what teachers need, right? But
Yes.
on the other hand, is to see young people. So I was in Illinois and this made me happy and sad at the same time. But imagine being in an elementary school and you're there 4 days and you got young little kids, a bunch of them, not just one or two, saying, "I want you to be my dad. I want you to be my daddy. Can I come live with you?" And so it makes you
Yeah.
happy, but it also makes you sad. And so, yeah, I don't know exactly where this is all going, but I'm booked every week. And I know the tools and the frameworks that I'll be using to build a plane. So,
It kind of sounds like you were finding, like, you had this moment in your life and it really propelled you deeply into an area that really you were passionate about. And you
yeah,
almost, you defined it, and then that kind of gave you wings. Like you have your own guardrails, your mission and vision that you're passionate about. And then you got out there and you're starting to do that. Before we started recording, you had talked about, you've been doing this for a long time, but it didn't really take off till recently. Can you, share a little bit more about that? Like,
yeah.
what was
So,
the propeller there for you?
so I was asked to do a keynote for the CSTA. Like we all know CSTA, right?
Yep.
And so I wanted to talk about EdTech and CS, and Victoria Thompson, that's at Microsoft, which I know you all know. She said to me, "If you could just map your journey backwards, what was the framework that in hindsight you used to take your passion and make it what it is now? Use that instead." And so because I did 9, 10 years on the road of doing workshops and working in a district, there's something called the net promoter score that we get at the end of the PD, right? And so I knew, so like mine was very high, which meant like 91% engagement, right? So I knew that my workshop was good, but I didn't have any experience in speaking as a keynote speaker or as a featured speaker. I didn't have that. In 2020, ISTE, which I wrote a book for and a lot of articles for, at the time, they had to cancel ISTE 2020
Yep.
and they made a new event. It's called the Summer Learning Academy. And they surveyed a lot of the teachers, lots of the educators. And basically what they heard was this: no more charismatic speakers. We want folks that can show us what to do, how to teach online. Back then, we were navigating equity a lot, right? And so that was a part of the conversation as well. And so I got the opportunity. And because my net promoter score was already high, I had already been doing it. I knew that it would be great, that it would resonate with folks. And I did. And 20,000 people registered. After that day, I went from 10 days a month to basically 20, 25 days a month. I went into charter schools, independent schools, into universities, in spaces that I hadn't been before. And it's taught me a lot, but it really is for helping other people and helping them, right? And helping them take their learning and level up. And that's my real purpose, right? So like all my passion and the things I'm doing, that's for George. That's what makes me feel fulfilled. That's why I wake up every day. I don't need anyone to tell me what to do. I am up every day. But my purpose, and that's what every person I think can have. Not everyone is going to find their passion. I don't think so. But everyone can be happy by doing things that they like to do, and they can help other people. And I'm a CEO of an organization called Brands Builder. And his name is Rory Vaden. And he said, you are always powerfully positioned to help the person that you used to be. And every person, every young person, every adult, if they're not sure what their passion is or what, how to cultivate an interest, if they just map their own journey backwards and say, well, what have I overcome in my life? Okay, if I overcame poverty, if I overcame a broken home, if I was a struggling teacher at one time, if I was a struggling administrator at one time, those are the people that I can help, that I can serve, and then we're blessed.
Love that. I love that so much. Might have to take that one. Powerfully positioned.
Well, it's not my quote, so
No.
I didn't make it up, but it's a great quote. And yeah,
I like that.
yeah. And so we will be talking about this framework and that journey and what they can do. And in fact, there's an ebook that I wrote that is free, that at the end, I will provide you a link tree that everyone that's watching, they can download it, download this immediately. And,
Oh, awesome.
and yeah, and it's a 6-pager. So each step has 1 page. It's pretty simple.
Awesome. I love that. Thank you. So, with that, I love that thinking about, finding your purpose and your passion. I guess, how do you connect the dots with project-based learning and helping teachers to help students do just that? What's your advice or what is your guidance when you coach educators to helping students do that?
Yeah, so there's a couple of articles that are on Edutopia. This process is on PBL Plus. I'm in the book, and I will definitely be explaining this, and I'll be providing all other resources at the conference. But it's an inventory, or it's like a survey where a young person, they get to first explore what makes them happy and what makes them sad. You see, there's external factors that make people happy. A relationship, parties, a new toy, things like that. But that's not what I'm talking about when I say being happy. Research shows that being happy is also an internal state that one arrives at when they do stuff that they like to do. And so young people need to help themselves also, right? And part of that is having them understand, well, what makes me happy, what makes me stress internally, and then help them in projects sort of navigate or find ways of doing more of what makes them happy.
Yep.
Then the next step is now to, consider your passion. So I created an inventory, or a curation of a plethora of different things in art, in music, in artificial intelligence, in technology, in environmental education. There's a bunch of different things that they can answer a few questions, and they can investigate, am I interested in this or not? And then find if there's a problem that they want to solve within that thing. For example, if they're into the environment, if they're into a social issue, like, economics, if they have a problem there, they can say, okay, I'm interested in this. I am passionate, or I'm interested. How do I now go about this? Well,
What's next? Yep.
now you set a goal, and then you manifest it. Manifestation is not speaking it into existence in this case. It's basically listening to what your inner thoughts and your inner voice is telling you, then speaking only to an expert, right? When you speak it to someone that has already accomplished what you want to accomplish, right? And then After getting that advice, then you start to map it and write it down, right? And then as you're working on it, you have to understand, the experts always say this. Malcolm Gladwell said this. In order to master anything, it takes about 10,000 hours, 3 hours a day, 20 hours a week for 10 years. And you can shorten it if you do it more hours a day, which I actually did at one time. And you basically, in the 10,000 hours, what the research shows is not just practicing for 10,000 hours. It's a tandem of learning from experts and practicing 10,000 hours. And let's say young people, see, the concept of passion is not universal. Everyone will not find it, right? Or everyone they won't know what they want to do. So you can, once you explore here, you can bypass these two and just map your own journey backwards. Who was I at one time? And who can I help? And research shows that you don't have to be passionate. You don't have to be passionate to feel the fulfillment and the blessings of helping others. And that's what I hope that in my work, I hope that is the message when I'm long gone and I'm not here anymore, that really resonates with folks. That was really, yeah, like all these different books, all this different stuff was really just for that at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's your banner, and it should be clear as day, like throughout all your writing, because that's
I want it on the grave.
that's what you want on the grave.
I want it on my grave.
I have a question for the
Sure.
listeners too, but you talked about sort of an inventory on that Explore. I have so many teachers that would love to have, students go through that to see what they're, interested in. And I know there's like interest surveys and things like that.
You want it right now?
Sure.
Okay.
Real time.
But don't get mad because at the conference, like we got to do something, right?
Yeah, that's true. You might, yes. Early adopters.
I will definitely share it though. Hold on. So let me so it's 2 articles.
Okay.
And in the book though, there's a lot more information, but yeah. So here's 5 steps for high engagement in PBL, and the inventory is actually in there. And I'm going to show you something really, really quick. So a lot of educators that I work with, they're like, okay, so I understand doing projects and all of that, but I need a recipe for how to start and how to end. So you start with a compelling hook, right? You get them interested. All of that's explained here. And then they explore a major concept, and the major concept can come. Yeah, see, art, environmental, financial literacy, health and medical, all these different things that I've put together. So they can explore that. And there's another planner that's in the article that they can also find, but 3, they learn from experts. 4, they developed a solution, and then they present it in the public. So that's one article. I'm going to put that into the chat.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yep. Oh, I already did. Okay. I'll do it one more time. And then there's one more article, which it really goes back to what we just discussed. And so I write these articles as I'm working because there's a lot of educators that will probably never get to meet me and will never get to see me, but the articles are always laid out like a chapter 4 in a dissertation, step by step of how to implement. Yeah. So there you go. Now y'all have it, but in the workshop, I explain it and I unpack it and help them unpack it as well.
I love that you have sort of like almost like a playbook within your framework of like what you're doing. Cause like you said, I know like at the time of the pandemic, we don't need just compelling speakers to motivate people. We need like hands-on, we need action because we've got a big problem to solve. And so one thing I really appreciate about sort of your message is, at least my takeaway is like, well, what is the problem and how can we solve it? Even in a learning walk, like what are those high yield strategies that, hey, this could help you in this situation? So I'm excited to learn more and get the PBL plus going on.
So I will say this, I always tell my story authentically and the way it really happened to me. because I never want another person to look at me and say, yo, that's a lot of work. That's a lot. I don't think I could do that. No, no. So I've done workshops as a teacher. I was never a featured speaker or a public speaker until 2020. When I saw the recordings, I saw how much it sucked. And I worked on it
No.
and worked on it and worked on it. And now, even now, I don't feel like it's where it should be. However, it's good enough, right? And so for anyone watching, whatever your passion is, whatever you want to do, just work on it. Just work on it. Learn from those that have already accomplished it. Fail forward, make mistakes. Mistakes are part of the process, and it's how we learn.
Iterations. Always iterations. I love that. I think that's a really good message for kids to hear. And I like that you're not shy about like, hey, this didn't work very good that first time. Because if people always see perfect shiny, that's
Yeah,
that's not reality.
it's not reality at all. No, no one. So some people have natural abilities and talents, right?
Yeah.
That's true. Some of the things I'm doing now weren't mine. My passion was education, helping others, my lifelong learning and defining that and helping others.
Yeah.
But everything else that you're seeing right now, I had to learn, like all the writing and all the books and stuff.
Yeah.
I started writing horrible articles, and the folks at SD, this is true, because a lot of people, they don't ask me about, well, tell me about the hot PBL and SEL. They're like, George, how do you do that bit? Like the stuff you're doing, how do you do that? Well, I've had good mentors. There's a lady at ISTE, and her name is Diana Fingal. And she
Shout
actually,
out.
yeah, shout out. She marked up my first article. And she said, this is great if it was an editorial at the New York Times, but we're not the New York Times. So she taught me the framework. This is what our folks need. They need a small introduction, why this is important, a little bit of the research, how you're using this, and then 3-4 steps that they can put into action. After doing that over and over, and you see a common theme in my work, 3-4 steps, 2 steps, right?
Yep.
That's because you have to examine the pain point of the audience, and you have to give them information in the way that they receive it.
That's awesome. What a gold nugget for everyone listening. Like if you're ever considered writing out, for like Edutopia or any of these articles, like just having a format. I don't think people know that walking into it, right? Like they want to share their goods, but they don't necessarily know how to do that. So getting feedback was like an answer for you. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know we're gonna run out of time soon, but I did want to ask you, because we've talked about it beforehand. AI. It is like the hot topic. Everything I see on social media scrolling, it's AI this, AI that. I want to know what George thinks about AI and education. Can you
all right.
a little bit?
All right. So first things first. So I have a long history with STEM and computer science. And yes, teaching young people machine learning and artificial intelligence has always been part of computer science. Okay. So what we see now, I had no idea about until I think December. Around December, I got a phone call from one of my friends, and she was like, George, you got to look at ChatGPT. And I was like, so explain it to me. So she explained to me, it can write your articles, it can write this and that. And in my mind, I'm thinking, girl, that's not going to work for me. But I, but I don't want to burst her bubble. I was like, all right, cool. Well, anyway, I ended up making an account, and I'll be honest, I was paying someone $1,000 a month to do my reels, to do my caption. Well, they couldn't do the captions and they couldn't do the reels. I had to go in there and fix everything and still pay $1,000.
Yeah.
Now I pay $2,000 a year, and I do it myself. So I use ChatGPT to help me with my captions, sometimes emails, with my photographs, with lesson planning, like on the fly, just amazing, amazing things. In my opinion, I think if you're an entrepreneur, edupreneur, I think we can all agree, if you haven't learned about AI tools, I think you're going to be left back. It's like those folks that back in the day said, I'm not doing email, I'm not doing that. Sort of like that, right?
Yeah.
It's just not going to work out. And so the way that I use AI is as a teaching assistant. And instructional alignment is a very core practice in my workshops. And working with teachers, my job is to help them understand, to begin with the end in mind. What are my kids? What are they developing? What are they creating in my class? And so I'm a computer science teacher. So here's an example of instructional alignment, which I use now ChatGPT for. So I identify here is a program for a robot, right? Young people, like you can't tell them, well, just make the program. No, they need some learning goals each day, learning intentions. So these 3 learning intentions, if you add them all up, right, like that work that week, then the program will be successfully built. Well, here's the thing. Each learning goal needs some formative assessment and needs some high yielding, lessons or strategies or scaffolds. These 2 things need to align to the learning goal each day in everyone's classroom. So my workshop at EdTech is going to show educators how to cut back on their lesson planning time by using this tool. I also use tools like Remini for all my photos and video.ai, which helps me with my reels, videos. But of course, not everyone will be using it for that same purpose. But in our workshops, I will model how they can be used in PBL and in projects, and even just as a performance task. I have lots of ideas. These articles are already out there, by the way, right? Like they're on ISTE, they're on Edutopia, the steps. But I'm thinking right now, this is what I'm thinking, but I have no idea what will happen in October, right? They might have something new or something else happens. And so I will play it by ear, but for right now, this is what I have. And my plan is to help the folks at EdTech explore these tools if they want and follow some of my advice.
Oh, I love that. So really connecting like those creation tools and using AI to have some sort of authentic product at the end of their sort of PBL experience using AI. Oh, I love that. And we'll get to we'll get to experience that as learners in your session.
Yeah. Oh, and I do want to say one thing. So the AI article that I wrote for ISTE, Andrew and Lynn are mentioned in the article because so in the beginning, like if you go back to look at my old work 5, 6 years ago, there was a lot of tech tools, a lot of computer science stuff I was writing about, I was doing. But after a while, I got into pedagogy. That doesn't mean that I'm not using tech tools. It just means that they're not at the forefront at what I'm talking about. When I saw their session at NIDA in Nebraska, and the way that they just very simply modeled how to use the tools that they use every day, lots of AI tools, by the way, I said to myself, I can easily do something like that. I was inspired and I decided once a quarter, I'll write an EdTech article, right? And, it'll be part of a workshop. And so that's where, like this is all stuff I've been using, right? I didn't know that it would take over education, like at the conferences. I had no idea. I was using it. And when I saw that, I said, well, you need to show people what to do. And I've noticed that every presenter, every coach has their own way of doing things, has their, own spin on the tools and also other tools that other folks aren't using. And so I think that we can all contribute in this space and we're all doing amazing things. And I'm just happy that I am contributing.
Oh, I love that. I love that so much. And I think that's one of the, what we hope happens at EdTech is people are inspired and they see maybe a tool that they've heard about, but they've never thought about using it in that way. So I think that's very exciting. Well, I'm looking forward to your sessions. I cannot wait to learn more about these and how you use them. Before we go, I guess, is there this is when you first started talking about visible learning, I was like, ooh, is there any sort of quick, easy wins that, any teacher, could be doing that we could leave them with like a tangible, hey, this strategy, seen it done. You're like, yeah.
So, all right. In fact, let me pull up another slide deck so for everyone watching, Laura wants me to do all my presentations right now.
In just one sitting. We're a quick pace economy. We need these things now. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no. So let me see. So visible learning. Okay. So I'm going to pull up a slide. And I think I talked about this in Nebraska. And so for folks that do action research or they're in a graduate program, they know that when we're trying to see if something is effective, we do a pre-test and a post-test. Thumbs up if that makes sense. So what we're looking for in visible learning are high yielding strategies. High yielding means this: they've been pre-tested and post-tested, and there's been a year's worth of time in between those two tests. In education, 1 year's about 10 months, right? So what Dr. Hattie says is this: any strategy that has an effect size over 0 has a positive impact on either academic achievement or engagement. That's what I'm going for in my workshops. But here's the caveat: any strategy between 0.1 and 0.3 is low yielding, meaning learning won't stick for long. For example, rote memorization, which is a strategy that we have to use sometimes, but it's a low yielding strategy. Visible learning is concerned with high yielding, anything over 0.4 or better. And so my job as a coach is to go into workshops, is to go into districts, bringing strategies that either I've developed or I found in visible learning, like, let's say, Jigsaw, right? And essentially modeling how I do it. And so here's the thing. Teaching is part art and part science. Here's the science. The art is how we do it, right? I believe that humans were artistic, doing what's in their mind and their heart before we were scientific, before we were scientists. And so as humans evolved, we've had to start conducting research and start to take research into account when making decisions. In education, we're making instructional decisions. So that's what that's about. And so I would definitely, Visible Learning is a book. It's by Dr. John Hattie. I believe the first version, it came out in 2009. And I'll be honest, I am a visible learning teacher. Yeah. So I don't do things exactly how I see them, but I do it in my own way, but I consider what the science says. For example, the science says that the factors that make someone engaged is positive interaction.
Yeah.
Is having him or her have some say over how they're going to learn. So I consider these things as I'm developing my lessons and my projects and my workshops.
Love that. Thank you for giving us a little taste of that. Hopefully that has got everybody's interest piqued and they'll want to learn more. And we cannot wait to have you this October in Iowa. Whoop, whoop. If there are any, I don't think I saw any questions in the chat, but for anyone on the call today that's live, are there any questions for George while we have him? I don't think there were.
Well, here's a QR code if you guys are interested in learning more about my work, some articles, books.
Look at me. I'm like doing it right now. I'm like taking that QR with my phone. Bookmarked.
Laura, I do have a question before we sign off for the day. George, you mentioned the empathy map. I know it's a while ago in the conversation, but I was kind of curious, in your experience when doing the empathy map, is it something that you have teachers try to design for each of their students? Do you have the students do it? Or do you have both do it and then kind of compare the teacher's perspective of the student to what the student truly believes about themselves?
I got you. So that's a great question. And that's a question that I always encounter. And here's the thing. Most teachers, well, I don't want to say most, but a lot of teachers I work with, they have 150 students. It's impossible to, do an empathy map for every kid, I would think. I would start with the kid that needs us the most. Not the kid that annoys us the most, but the one that needs us the most. And I find that a lot of the needs that our kids have, a lot of their classmates have as well. And so a lot of times when we design for one, we're essentially designing for several, right? Now, young people, I have a different version. So obviously that's for making instructional decisions and for forming a learning partnership. But for young people, it's a little different, right? in my work, I've seen that a lot of times some kids in classrooms, they're afraid to speak up in class or to answer questions because they'll be made fun of or they'll be bullied. At times, I've also seen where like a teacher is trying to teach and young people won't let them teach. They'll interrupt, they'll be rude, they'll be very disruptive. And so for my youth empowerment workshops, I developed a different version of the empathy map, which aligns more to what you see in the business world. In the business world, you're trying to empathize with someone by focusing on what they said and what they did. By focusing on what someone says and does, you can essentially kind of decipher how they may think and feel, right? And so I provide them an example for a peer. They have a template, but then also for their teachers. And so when they sit down and start to map out an activity like this, then they start to really consider, okay, this is how someone feels. And I really think, how do you communicate effectively if you don't have empathy? How do you do anything in a relationship if you're not trying to actively understand how someone thinks and feels? And so you have to take some time to focus on what they say and what they do. You know, and so is it perfect? I don't think so, but it's a step in the right direction. Yeah. I even had to do one for my wife, you know, just so y'all know. No, this is, in fact, look, I'm going to pull it up real quick because I have to go to, I have to go to Universal, but I'm going to pull it up real quick because see, this is the kind of stuff that people really want to know. Relationships. Yeah, so I have a new workshop. It's called Relationships Are the Most Important Thing in Life, but it's the hardest thing. Yeah, so let me fix this real quick. All right, let me share. Yeah, so here, you know, like my wife would, not anymore, y'all, but when she would get, but I'm trying not to laugh because I see
Things are
her
good
face.
now. It's fine now.
Yeah. So when she would get upset, she'd be like, you don't listen to me. And whenever she was in that mode, she would go into her own space. And so finally, I took the time to try to figure out, well, what does she think? In that moment, she probably thinks I don't care. And how does she feel? Probably lonely, sad, and unsure about my feelings. And so I always tell my audience, don't look at this sad face. This is actually how my wife really, really looks at times. I actually showed her this and she laughs about it. But yeah, like, you know, relationships are the most important thing. And, you know, these little tools I think are important for helping young people, helping adults kind of decipher these things, right? Because no one teaches you this stuff.
No.
I mean, yeah. So I think it's part of real life skills. You know, SEL is banned in a lot of places. So life skills.
I like that. Thinking about thinking and thinking about how you interact with people. I don't think we get very meta in our classrooms, partially because we either assume that they should know that, right? Or we don't have the time. Like that's not what I'm tasked to teach. But I think it's really important, like you said, empathy first, if you really want to go deeper and farther in learning, especially in a project-based setting where you're working and collaborating with others. It's really good.
And if someone would have told me that this is what some of my workshops would entail, like 3-4 years ago, I would have never believed them. Like this is personal. Yeah, like this is if I was doing on my own because I have 2 teenagers and I had to navigate those relationships, right? And so I was learning about emotional intelligence and these things.
Through empiricism, like this happened, everyone.
And then all of a sudden, like now it's part of education. And honestly, I think it's pretty important. I mean, in my opinion, yeah.
I 100% agree. Relationships first.
Yeah.
Well, I don't want to keep you from Orlando any longer than we have to. We are so grateful that you joined us on the road and gave us a beautiful background to look at as we learned from you today. Yes.
Let's follow me around.
So I think I saw like an eagle go by or some kind of big bird. I don't know if anyone else saw that.
Wait, so I try to empathize.
Oh,
I try to empathize. So I actually took a picture of the background in case you guys could not see what's happening.
oh, I would like to empathize with you right now.
It is unbelievable.
Go.
I cannot believe I'm here, but you know,
Yeah.
I made a commitment to y'all and to EdTech and to Iowa and to all our educators there. So I'm here with y'all for this hour. And
That's
I'm only wearing sunglasses, y'all, because it really is like that bright out here. And I have to see the screen. So
No, we like it. We like it. Well, okay. Well, that's our time, I guess. Thank you guys for coming. Thanks everyone who came live today. And thank you, George, for spending an hour with us on the road. And we cannot wait to see and meet you in person at EdTech.
likewise, likewise. Everyone, have a great day. Lynn, Andrew, Patrick, Laura, the entire board that made this happen. I'm so looking forward to it. I've never been to Iowa. I mean, I might have passed through Iowa, I think, right? Like on the way to Nebraska.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Yeah, I went through it somehow, but I'm very excited about Iowa.
Well, we are very welcoming and you will get that Iowa niceness for sure.
All
See
right.
ya. Bye, George.
Bye.